Coming up, understanding autism. The mother of a girl with the condition explains why more education is needed.
20 years of smartphones. What did the early ones look like?
And after the festival, the big clean-up and a bonus for charities who'll get what's left behind. Coming up, a hearing begins into a crash in which a woman from Leicester died. Details next.
Here this Monday now, it is 6 o'clock, the latest ITV News.
Hello and welcome to ITV News Central. On the programme tonight, hurtful and frustrating. An autistic girl's mother says her community doesn't understand the condition.
It's a case of, well, it's not happening to me, so I don't need to know about this. There is no compassion.
The morning after, the clean-up of abandoned camping equipment begins at the festival.
Super sub. Chris Wood's late goal shows Leicester City won't be Premier League pushovers.
And you'll be as mad as a hatter to miss our behind-the-scenes look at the Alice in Wonderland sequel.
Good evening. A hearing has begun into a crash in Scotland in which a woman from Leicester died and her husband was seriously hurt.
They were on a cycling holiday to celebrate their first wedding anniversary. The driver was a 93-year-old woman who had a medical condition which caused her to black out. Mark Goff reports.
Elaine Dunn died and her husband Christopher was severely injured in the crash in Scotland 3 years ago. The couple from Glenfield in Leicester were on a cycling holiday when they were hit by a car which veered onto the wrong side of the road and drove along the pavement. Elaine Dunn died at the scene. Her husband Christopher had multiple injuries and spent months recovering at Leicester General Hospital. The driver, Alice Ross, who was 93, had a medical condition which caused her to black out. She was charged with dangerous driving, but this was dropped at Edinburgh High Court when the prosecution admitted they hadn't called for their own medical assessments in time. Mrs. Dunn and her husband were cycling in the north of Scotland. They were heading south on the John O'Groats Road to Wick to catch the train home to Leicester when the accident happened in the hamlet of Auchengill. The fatal accident inquiry continues. Mark Goff, ITV News.
In other news, police have released images of 5 people they want to speak to in connection with an assault in which a man was left with a shoe print mark on his face. Officers say the 35-year-old victim was with 2 friends in the Royal Hotel in Sutton Coldfield when they were approached by a group who smashed bottles over their heads. A 23-year-old man arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm is on police bail pending further inquiries. The attack happened in the early hours of Saturday, the 26th of July.
Police are continuing to appeal for information after a 59-year-old man died in a car crash in Solihull. It happened yesterday afternoon in Bills Lane in Shirley. A 9-year-old is being treated in hospital for serious injuries. A 19-year-old man, arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, has been bailed pending further inquiries.
A 35-year-old man has appeared in court to deny 5 assault charges after a Free Gaza protest at a Tesco store in Birmingham. Naveed Zafar has been charged with 2 counts of assault, 3 counts of assaulting a police officer and 1 count of obstructing a police officer in the execution of their duty. Around 100 protesters gathered outside the Hodge Hill supermarket on Saturday afternoon. Zafar appeared before Birmingham magistrates today and was bailed ahead of a 2-day trial in November.
Production has stopped at Royal Crown Derby for 3 weeks from today in a bid to save jobs. Workers agreed to back the break last week. The 168 staff at the Osmaston Road factory will still be paid during the closure, but a voluntary redundancy programme has been introduced. The company's owners, Steelite International in Stoke, say the stoppage is necessary to cut costs and ensure the business is fit for the future.
The pub chain Punch Taverns has set out details of what they call their critical plan to try and tackle more than £2 million of debt. The Burton-upon-Trent-based firm will hold meetings with shareholders and creditors on September the 17th to try to reduce £600 million from its loans in a debt for equity swap. The firm has around 4,000 leased and tenanted pubs, and shareholders' interests would be slashed to just 15%. The chairman said it was critical that both shareholders and note holders voted in favour of the resolutions to help implement restructure.
The mother of an autistic teenage girl says she believes more community awareness is needed for people to better understand the condition. Pam Marley says she regularly has to deal with stigma and stares and wants to educate others about the disability.
It comes as a new report by the National Autistic Society suggests there's not enough support for parents from Asian, black and ethnic minority communities. Nancy Cole reports.
Playing with her younger brother and sister, Aisha Mali from Oadby is like any other teenager. She was 18 months old when she was diagnosed with autism. It means she sometimes struggles to cope in everyday situations, like going to the shops.
Could be a little bit of sound that could trigger off a meltdown. It could be a lot of noise that she doesn't like. It could be the fact that there's too many people around. And it's a case of they stand and stare and make a bad situation worse instead of offering any kind of support or help or even trying to understand.
For Mum Pam, it can be hurtful and frustrating seeing how people within her own community react to her daughter. She says there's still limited awareness of the condition among Asians.
Within different ethnic minority groups, we do seem to look down at someone who's got a disability. We don't really want to understand it. It's a case of, well, it's not happening to me, so I don't need to know about this. There is no compassion.
Pam's experience was highlighted as part of new research by the National Autistic Society. The charity asked a series of focus groups of parents with autistic children across the country about the daily challenges they deal with. It found three main areas where families from black, Asian and ethnic minority communities struggle when trying to get that initial diagnosis, then being able to access the services they need, and the ability to feel supported by their own community. The charity is now advising local authorities to think more about the services they have in place to support families from minority communities.
Training people who do speak community languages, and also being able to go into places like mosques or churches or wherever to get that across, because it is an issue.
For Pam, the negativity she's experienced has led her to blog about the positives of living with autism.
1 in every 68 children is diagnosed, and that's a huge number. And we can't think it's going to happen to other people or other cultures. It's happening within our own. It's happening within our ethnic minorities. We need to support these children. We need to be there for their children, and we need to have a huge understanding of how autism affects the daily life of these children who will eventually go on to become adults.
She's now in the process of setting up a support group in her local area to help other mums and dads. Nancy Cole, ITV News, Leicester.
Well, there's more on the issues raised in this story on our website. Just go to itv.com/central.
West Midlands Police has revealed a list of the most common accidents that officers are claiming compensation for while on duty. Nearly £600,000 has been paid out on personal injury claims by 26 officers over the last year. They include falling off a faulty chair, dog bites, being hit by a car park barrier, trips and falls at work, stress and injuries by colleagues responding to incidents. The force says the figures reflect improvements that has led to a 7.5% fall in injuries and accidents.
Hereford United Football Club has issued a statement saying the business will continue despite recent fears over their future. Last week, a sponsorship bid to save the club from liquidation was rejected, which will happen if debts aren't cleared by September the 1st. The club says it's now contacting sponsors and further announcements will be made during this week.
Well, it's mainly been a weekend of fun and music for the tens of thousands of people who descended on Weston Park in Staffordshire for this year's V Festival.
However, 3 people suffered serious side effects after taking a drug they thought was ecstasy. And another man was airlifted to hospital with chest pains. But otherwise, the festival passed off peacefully, and now the clean-up begins.
Around 500 charity volunteers will be working over the next 2 days to help clear the fields where people stayed, to collect equipment that's been left behind as rubbish. Lee Comley sent this report.
Tens of thousands of people have been here to Weston Park this weekend to enjoy V Festival, and of course they brought with them lots of tents and camping equipment. Now that those people have gone, you might be surprised to see what they've left behind. Many people have just left their perfectly good tents and camping equipment, lots of food and drink, and that could all become rubbish and just go to landfill. It's a huge amount to clean up over 2 fields where people have been staying. But today and tomorrow, around 500 volunteers from Rotary clubs across the country are going to be here cleaning this away. And what they'll be doing is checking whether the tents can be reusable, whether the camping equipment can be reused. That will be then all collected together and they'll be sent to places across the world where it's needed most.
Well, last year we had 500 volunteers. We're expecting a similar number this year. And we took about 5,000 tents and sleeping bags and chairs and other little bits of cooking equipment that is all necessary for humanitarian aid. So around about 5,000, I would say. And they'll go off to International Aid Trust in Preston, where they're cleaned, repackaged and then distributed for humanitarian aid when it's needed. They will go to disaster areas, and the bigger tents that we collect will become homes for people. They will become temporary housing for people. And along with the sleeping bags and the other camping equipment, this is life-saving equipment that we take.
In just a few days' time, the 2 fields that people have been camping in will be all back to normal. There'll be no sign that there ever was a festival here at all. And while all this equipment, everything that's been left behind, all this rubbish might appear incredibly wasteful, those from the Rotary Club say that by being able to recycle all the equipment and tents that have been left here enables them to help so many people across the world.
Well, I'm glad somebody benefits from it, but it is staggering.
Yes, it
what
is.
People
what a
leave
waste.
behind.
Yes, I know.
Can't be bothered packing the tent. Leave it.
At least some good comes out of it.
Yeah, indeed. Right, you're watching ITV News Central. Still to come, we're on set as filming begins for the big Alice in Wonderland sequel. But where's Johnny Depp?